from the report and from the views of ASU, well, you say that there was a problem, but this appointment, from the look of things, doesn't seem to be assuaging those frayed nerves. It doesn't solve the problem either, does it?
That shows lack of critical mind.
On both parts?
On the part of whoever is agitating. First, you understand the basis of the appointment. Ninth Governing Council was dissolved. The acting Vice Chancellor probably could not cope with those who were intrigued and interested in certain persons. Consequently, you had a situation where part of the bursary was burnt. Certainly, things had gone out of control. There must be an immediate overseer to control things, someone who is not a party to either of the conflict groups within the campus, within the university, over time. You needed a neutral person. Do you understand? And that was why the executive governor brought in someone else, so that you don't have these cliques, I belong to this group, I belong to that group, I want to undo this, so as to see that as not performing. And at that time, you have just dissolved council. How do you go on to appoint another council? When would that council sit down and start overseeing activities in the university? You didn't know who next you would appoint within that university, who would be neutral and make sure that the mission and the vision of the university, the motto, is actualized. Okay. That was the basis. It must be. It is fundamental, and it must be understood in that regard. It must be assessed and appraised and appreciated in that regard. So it was not a question of having to come and set up a selection committee. The council, definitely, if appointed, must exist for a while to understand the working in the university, the various groups. You cannot divorce it from sentiments, from emotions, from the psychological perspective and reasoning of groups and persons in the place. So that was not an issue. It was important that someone, the visitor and the executive governor considered competent, was appointed to hold the fort, first as an acting Vice Chancellor. And if the person did perform, he has the right to make the person substantive.
Do you think that there is any foul play going on here? I mean, because you have given examples of appointments that did not follow selection.
Yes.
Even was council sitting then when those when those appointments were made, and you're wondering why there is, why they're kicking against this, considering that there have been precedents in that particular direction.
Initially,
do you think that there is something sinister going on? I mean, something.
I think so.
What do you think it could be?
Initially, the argument was Professor Fakaye was from outside the university. We have also had the experience when Professor Banigu was appointed Vice Chancellor of the university from outside. The contest, if there's a selection procedure, is usually internally and externally advertised, so that persons from outside who qualify with good experience can be appointed or selected through that process. So there must be definitely people belong to different groups. There are those who might not like the executive governor and his activities.
That was the first reason. I mean, the fact you said presented the first reason that he was from outside the university.
Yes.
What other reasons were given?
Yes. That was a prime reason then. It was a prime reason. And if there are undertones of people who belong to other political parties who might not want, who might not want someone else to achieve in his regime, it is possible that there is an undertone of politics in it too. If not, if someone is performing, why do you kick against the person?
Well, you know how they say it is democracy, so they had to, he was there just for the time being in acting capacity.
Yes.
So they had to go through the process, the due process. And is there anything wrong in they saying, well, they don't like him, they don't want him? Must he be forced on the people?
There is one thing in saying what you like, and there's another thing in seeing someone achieving what is the essence of having a vice chancellor. If over time the executive governor talked about deplorable condition, and you know quite all right that in most of our universities we have the problem. Why are we shying away from it? We are committing crime against the future generation and against ourselves, because we'll be very old at the time the so-called leaders would be leading us, would be directing affairs of this nation. Would we say that we have performed? I have had to ask several professors who complain that present postgraduate students cannot study, do not perform, would want to cheat, would want to plagiarize. I ask them, does it mean that you failed? Which means you didn't bring up the crop of people who would sustain academics, who would sustain the nature of academics, who would sustain the society. So why should we shy away from that? If there is someone who is performing and you want the person to continue so as to create stability and sanity in the system, you sacrifice on the altar of choosing, selecting, and the selection process most times is not
Professor Gabriel, just allow me to come in. I'm happy you talked about the future, which is very key here. Once we talked about that here, when people go on strike, well, so long as you sort yourselves out, don't let the students suffer further. What is the government doing? Because they say they started a warning strike, which some other institutions across the country observed with ASU. And after the warning strike, they're expecting to see a full-blown strike concerning the same matter. And you say we should protect the future generation, who are now the students presently in your school. Any plans to making sure that this is actually settled once and for all?
Oh, definitely. Definitely, there's a new governing council, the 11th governing council. And people have to teach. University did not shut down. There was no warning strike by the local branch. The administration was not, university management was not informed. And how did they arrive at calling out lecturers on strike?
So there was a strike?
They claimed, ASU claimed withdrawal of services of members.
Yeah, but there was a notice. The press conference was held.
A notice to the management, or you go on air, collect some voice and make statements. There is a procedure. You formally write management.
Yeah, but it's the same thing they're talking about. That governor did not go through procedure. So now how could they claim procedure when it suits them?
If you talk of academics, you should be a true academic, irrespective of the situation. You don't sacrifice your calling and the nature of your assignment or your career because others are stealing, I should steal. Because others are sorting grades, should I do the same? I shouldn't. I have my calling, I have my career, I have my service to this nation. I should be responsible. You don't do things like that. So they did not even inform management. Management was not informed. There was no 1 week warning strike. But then, how did they even arrive at that? ASU does not use voice vote. How was it arrived in the meeting? How many people voted in favor? How many people voted against?
Did anybody?
People attended meeting to vote against.